Let's now shift focus to another story that WION has been tracking. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga is visiting Vietnam and Indonesia in his first trip abroad since taking office. The Japanese Prime Minister arrived in Vietnam on Sunday evening. The visit to the Southeast Asian countries comes amid growing concerns over Chinese aggression in the region. After Quad, which comprises Japan, US, India and Australia, Tokyo is clearly seeking to open another front against China. This as several ASEAN members, including the Philippines, have ongoing territorial disputes with China. While Vietnam is a co-chair of the 10-member Association of the Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, Indonesia is the group's biggest economy.
また両国との間で自由で開かれたインド太平洋の実現に向けた協力や南シナ海問題、北朝鮮情勢等の地域及び国際社会の喫緊の課題への対応について意見を交わす予定であります。
Suga is following the footsteps of his predecessor Shinzo Abe, who also made a trip to the two Southeast Asian nations after taking office. The Japanese Prime Minister is under pressure by ruling lawmakers to take tougher stance against China. Now, for more updates on Suga's visit to Vietnam, Grace Lee is joining us live from Tokyo for more. A very warm welcome to you, Grace. Now, the Japanese Prime Minister Suga is in Vietnam as part of his Southeast Asian tour as he courts international investors. Now, Suga is also the first foreign leader of a big economy visiting Vietnam since the pandemic began. And experts say that a new alliance against China is being formed with strong economic and defense ties with a huge focus on security. So tell us more about the agenda of this visit.
Yeah, it's just as you described it. Prime Minister Suga will likely be looking to diversify Japan's supply chains. As we saw during the pandemic, China, when it first went under lockdown, Japan was hit pretty hard, as was many other nations around the world. So there is this rush from countries like Japan, India, Australia, the Quad nations that we saw. They are trying to quickly diversify their supply chains as quickly as possible to try and become a little bit more immune to any kind of further impact if China should go under another lockdown like this in the future. Now, we are hearing that the Prime Minister will likely strike a deal with Vietnam to import and export medical goods to each other, diversify the supply chain in that sense. But they're also looking to strike a military agreement in which Japan would be able to send some defense goods over to Vietnam as well. So there will be a lot of eyes on that to see what that'll mean for the two countries and their stance against China.
Right. Now, Vietnam is one country that has been praised globally for its handling of the coronavirus outbreak. And it has even made a new trade deal with the European Union and is even negotiating one with the UK. Even the US, for that matter, is showing interest. So what will Suga hope to gain from this visit?
Yeah, well, obviously, Suga wants to engage in more trade with Vietnam. It's a very attractive place, cheap labor, a lot of young labor, something that Japan obviously does not have as one of the fastest growing older nations in the world. So he is likely looking to try and make that happen as soon as possible. One of the holdbacks at the moment, though, is the travel ban that Japan has. Japan has one of the strictest travel bans in the world at the moment. A lot of business travelers coming into Japan have to wait 2 weeks under quarantine as well, even if they're from places like Vietnam, where they essentially have much lower cases than Japan. So he's likely going to try and have a discussion there to make that a little bit more efficient, perhaps have business travelers from Vietnam not go through that 2-week quarantine and try and speed up business that way.
Right. My final question for you, Grace. Now, Vietnam, for one, has been very critical of Beijing's encroachments and growing influence in the region. And Suga's visit now is bound to irk Xi Jinping's organization and his administration. So do we expect China to react to this visit?
Probably, we will probably hear from China's foreign ministry on their thoughts on what's been going on here. But this visit comes at the tail end of some rough times for Japan and China. China recently sent some ships over to the disputed islands of what Japan calls Senkaku and stayed there for a record amount of time. So tensions are very high between Japan and China at the moment. As well, Vietnam is not happy with how China's been behaving in the South China Sea as well. So there are kind of ongoing issues between these three nations, and Japan is trying to shore up, as you mentioned, support from different Southeast Asian nations in order to create this new front against China. So we'll see how that goes. That military pact that I mentioned earlier will be part of that. So there will be a lot of eyes from China watching to see what this will mean for China.
Right, Grace, thank you so much for all your inputs, and thank you for joining us on this broadcast.